1 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 6 through chapter 6, verse 8. Verses 6 and 7. Your glorifying is not good. Know ye not that a little leaven unleaveneth the whole lump? Purge out therefore the old leaven, that ye may be a new lump, as you are unleavened. Burkett notes, as if the apostle had said, you Corinthians are prone to pride yourselves in the number of wise and wealthy men that are found among you. You glory that Corinth is the eye of Greece, and Greece the eye of the world. But what do you glory in this for? When you have such a scandalous person among you, the incestuous man, who is a blot and a blemish to your whole society, know ye not, as a little leaven leaveneth and soureth the whole lump? So such a member continued among you will defile the whole body or society of Christians with you. Therefore, purge out this old leaven. Cast the scandalous person out of your communion, that ye may be a new lump, your whole church, a holy society, as ye are unleavened. That is, forasmuch as ye are by your profession of Christianity obliged to be unleavened, that is, separated from sin and sinners. Learn hence, 1, that all sin in general, but the sin of uncleanness in particular, is as leaven in regard to its spreading and diffusive nature. Old leaven, it is here called, because the Corinthians had been long infamous for this sin of uncleanness, even to a proverb. Observe next that the apostle, having used the similitude of leaven, he pursues it in allusion to the Jewish custom before the celebration of the Passover, who were called to cast all leaven out of their houses with detestation and cursing, upon penalty of being cut off from the congregation of Israel. Thus, the holy profession of Christianity obliges every one of us to cut off every notorious sinner from our society, every lust from our hearts, every member of the old Adam, that we may be a new lump, answering our holy and heavenly calling. Verse 7 continued with verse 8. For even Christ, our Passover, is sacrificed for us. Therefore let us keep the feast, not with old leaven, neither with the leaven of malice and wickedness, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. Burkett notes, observe here the apostle's reason why the old leaven of uncleanness and malicious wickedness should be put away by us, namely, because Christ, our Passover, is sacrificed for us. We should therefore be as careful to put away sinful lusts out of our hearts as the Jews were to cast the material leaven out of their houses. Learn hence, 1, that Christ is our Passover, or Paschal Lamb, in allusion to which he is often called a lamb in the New Testament. We do not find him expressed in the New Testament by the name of any other animals which typified him, but only this, of a lamb, this being more significant of his innocency and sufficiency than any other. St. John 1:20, he is called God's Lamb. Here he is called our Passover, or Paschal Lamb. God's in regard of the author, ours in regard to the end. God's in regard of designation, ours in regard of acceptation. Learn, too, that Christ is our sacrifice. A sacrifice was necessary for a sinful creature to atone divine displeasure. A sacrifice for sin must be pure and sinless. No such sacrifice could be found but the eternal Son of God, for whatever any creature could do or suffer had been but a debt or duty, and that could never have made compensation or satisfaction for a debt of rebellion. Learn, 3, that Christ was sacrificed for us, not for himself. For being perfectly sinless, he needed no sacrifice. Now the notion of all sacrifices, both among Jews and heathens, was this, that they were substituted in the room and place of the offender to appease an offended deity and exempt the guilty person from punishment. Accordingly, our sins were imputed to Christ, and he died under the imputed guilt of them, as a reputed sinner. For we cannot conceive how divine justice should inflict the punishment upon Christ, had it not first considered him under guilt. The weight of all of our sin was laid upon his innocent shoulders. Our guilt became his by a voluntary acceptation of the punishment, and consequently the sufferings of this sacrifice are imputed to us. He took our sins upon himself as if he had actually sinned, and gave us the benefit of his sufferings, as if we had actually suffered and satisfied. Observe next the inference drawn by the apostle from Christ's dying a sacrifice for us. Therefore, let us keep the feast, not an anniversary or yearly, but a daily feast, even all the days of our Christian life. Let the whole of our lives be as the Jewish feast of Passover was, free from leaven, from the leaven of malice and wickedness, and full of sincerity and uprightness both towards God and man. Learn hence the duty of every particular and individual Christian. Seeing Christ has died as a sacrifice for his sin, his duty is to live unto Christ, by living up to the rule which Christ has given him, abhorring all malice, abandoning all wickedness, acting all that sincerity towards God, and exercising that truth and uprightness towards man, which will be an ornament to our profession whilst we are upon earth, and will bring us at length to the fruition of God in heaven. Verses 9 through 11. I wrote unto you in an epistle not to company with fornicators, yet not altogether with the fornicators of this world, or with the covetous, or the extortioners, or with idolaters, for then must ye needs go out of the world. But now I have written unto you not to keep company if any man that is called a brother be a fornicator, or covetous, or an idolater, or a railer, or a drunkard, or an extortioner. With such a one, no, not to eat. Burkitt notes, here our apostle tells them that he had written to them in this or some other epistle, before he was fully acquainted with their affairs, not to company with fornicators, that is, to shun all intimacy and familiarity with infidels. But he did not mean or intend that they should have no converse or commerce with them, because they lived among unbelievers, and could not go out of the world. But now, since he heard of the miscarriage of this incestuous person, who was certainly a Christian, and probably a doctor or teacher among them, he warns them to avoid all brotherly intimacy and familiarity with scandalous Christians, lest the church be thought to favor such. With such a one, says he, no, not to eat. Admit not such to your own table, much less to Christ's. Learn from hence, 1, that all unnecessary society and intimate familiarity with scandalous professors ought to be avoided, that religion may not be thought to favor them, and the church may not suffer by them. Learn, 2, that as it ought to be the church's care to purge out such and separate them from her communion, so it is every private Christian's duty to avoid the familiarity with them which is in their power, even that which lieth in their friendly eating with them. Learn, 3, if civil eating with scandalous professors of religion be forbidden at our own table, much less ought any church to permit and suffer them a religious eating at the Lord's table, which was never spread for such guests. Verses 12 and 13. For what have I to do to judge them also that are without? Do not ye judge them that are within, but them that are without God judgeth. Therefore put away from among yourselves that wicked person. Burkitt notes, as if the apostle had said, my jurisdiction extendeth not to the heathens. I have nothing to do to judge and censor them that are without the church. But such as are within the pale of the church, your own members, your own jurisdiction, these you have an undoubted right and power to judge, leaving the others to the judgment of God. Therefore I advise, nay, charge you, put away from yourselves that wicked and incestuous person, by excommunicating and banishing him from your communion. As banishment is a civil excommunication, so excommunication is a spiritual banishment. Magistrates must drive malefactors out of civil society, and church officers must expel enormous offenders out of their religious society. For they who are unfit for civil converse are much more unfit for spiritual communion. The last words, therefore put away from among yourselves that wicked person, help us clearly to understand the former precept, verse 7, purge out the old leaven, etc. That they are not in their first and proper sense to be interpreted of particular persons purging out of their lusts and mortifying their corruptions, though that be a very necessary duty, but it is to be understood of every Christian church's duty to purge out from among them all flagitious and enormous offenders. Chapter 5. Burkitt notes, the Holy Apostle, having in the former chapter taxed the Corinthians for their great negligence in not judging the incestuous person in a case ecclesiastical, In this chapter, he blames them for their too great forwardness in going to judgment in matters civil and political. These Corinthians, who were converted by the apostle to the Christian faith, went to law with and impleaded one another before heathen judges, whereas they ought to have submitted their differences to be heard before and decided by the saints, that is, their brethren and fellow Christians. Now this mighty scandal to Christianity our apostle upbraids them with, and sharply reproves them for in this chapter, in which he thus bespeaks them. Verses 1 through 3. Dare any of you, having a matter against another, go to law before the unjust, and not before the saints? Do ye not know that the saints shall judge the world? And if the world be judged by you, are ye unworthy to judge the smallest matters? Know ye not that we shall judge angels? How much more things that pertain to this life? Burkitt notes, observe here, 1, that it was not simply and absolutely their going to law which the apostle condemns, but their impleading one another at pagan tribunals and before heathen judges. The law is good if used lawfully, but the best things may be abused. So is oft the law itself. Most evident it is that the apostle, who is offended at their using the law before infidels, allows it before Christians, as the first verse implies. Observe, 2, the title given to the Corinthian converts. They are all called saints, because they were all so by outward profession, and many of them so by inward sanctification. Whence learn, 1, that all those who take upon them the profession of Christianity are obliged to be saints, and may be so called, being such by visible profession. 2, that the true and real Christian is a true and real saint. His heart is inwardly renewed and sanctified, his life thoroughly reformed and changed. Observe 3, the several errors enumerated by our apostle in the Corinthians going to law. 1, in regard of the adversary. Brother goeth to law with brother. Not infidel with infidel, nor infidel with Christian, but Christian with Christian, brother with brother, which seems both unnatural and unchristian. 2, in regard of the judges chosen to decide and umpire their controversies. They were infidels and unbelievers, not saints. If brother will go to law with brother, let them make choices of Christian judges. But for Christians to refuse Christians, and to choose to be judged by infidels, was highly scandalous. What will heathens say when Christians are together by the ears and infidels live in unity? Observe 4, the great argument used by the apostle to dissuade them from this practice. He argues from the greater to the less. The saints shall judge the world, the wicked world, yea, the apostate angels in another world. Are they not fit then to judge and determine trivial matters between man and man, between one Christian and another here in this world? Learn hence that the saints, as assessors with Christ and approvers of his righteous judgment, shall at the great day judge the wicked world and the apostate angels. O ye wicked world, ye that now revile and scorn, that injure and wrong the saints and servants of the Most High God, know that they shall one day be your judges. O ye saints, who shall be the judges of the world, know that your time of judging in this world is not yet. Do not anticipate your work, nor antedate your commission. Judge nothing before the time, till the Lord comes. Verses 4 through 8. If then ye have judgments of things pertaining to this life, set them to judge who are least esteemed in the church. I speak to your shame. Is it so that there's not a wise man among you? No, not one that shall be able to judge between his brethren. But brother goeth to law with brother, and that before the unbelievers. Now therefore there is utterly a fault among you, because you go to law with one another. Why do you not rather take wrong? Why do you not rather suffer yourself to be defrauded? Nay, ye do wrong and defraud, and that your brethren. Burkitt notes, it must still be observed that the apostle doth not go about to abolish the use of secular judgments or condemn going to law, but only reproves the abuses that were found among them therein. Brother going to law with brother, that is, one Christian with another, and this not before a Christian, but a heathen magistrate, by means whereof the Gentiles become acquainted with the covetousness, ambition, and revenge which was among the Christians, to the dishonor of God, and to the discredit of the gospel. More particularly, the apostle further censures and reproves them, first, for going to the law about trifles and small matters. Are ye unworthy to judge the least matters? Should Christians thus implead one another before infidels for mere trifles? It seems it's been an ancient and too common fault that every petty difference has pestered the tribunal. Secondly, for their impleading and persecuting one another. It was with heat and passion, with impatience and impetuous anger. Going to law is one of those duties which is difficultly managed without sin. It's a hard matter for a man to right his estate and not wrong his soul. Thirdly, he reproves them because they did not choose rather to put up with some wrongs than right themselves by going to law. Why do you not rather take wrong? Why do you not suffer yourselves to be defrauded? Teaching us that something should not only be hazarded, but parted with for peace' sake. Peace is a jewel worth our buying at a dearer rate than most men are willing to give for it. And a peaceable Christian will put up with many injuries patiently, rather than use extremity, referring his cause to him that judges righteously, who very often in this life repays us what we part with for peace' sake twice over. Blessed are the meek, they shall inherit the earth. Fourthly, the apostle blames them for their precipitation and haste in going to law with one another. The law should have been their last refuge after trial of all other means. First, they should have referred it to their brethren. If they could not end it, then the law was open. But instead of this, as soon as any difference arose, they sent presently for a writ to the heathenish courts of adjudicature. Fifthly, he blames the ignorance which was found among them, that there was no wise person found with them who could compromise and compose differences before they went too far. Verse 5, I speak it to your shame. Is it so that there is not a wise man amongst you that is able to judge between his brethren? As if he had said, What, will ye all stand and look on these unkind bickerings? And is there not one among you that has so much skill as to quiet and compose them? I am really ashamed of it. Sixthly, he rebukes their slothfulness, together with their ignorance, that they were lazy as well as unskillful, and unwilling to interpose for the composing of their brothers' differences. A little pains, timely taken by us, may prevent abundance of strife and dissension between contending brethren. These are the principal faults which the apostle condemns in these Corinthians going to law. It is not the action or thing itself, but the circumstances attending it and the mismanagement of it that is here condemned, which being rectified, law is no doubt lawful, whatever some erroneous persons have affirmed to the contrary.